It's the COD.
Episode 15 with your hosts, Ryan and Paul.
Yeah, Paul and Ryan. Welcome back.
We're sitting down with a very special guest.
Yeah, we got Daniel Patton. Daniel Patton is here to join us tonight, and we're really happy that he can sit down with us. Daniel, go ahead and tell everybody about yourself.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, first and foremost, Paul. Thank you so much for the invitation to join the COD tonight. Like, this is awesome. Paul and I go way back to, I guess, the '90s, if you think about it.
Oh shit!
I'm not that old, Daniel. Time out.
Oh man!
If I'm talking
Speak about it.
It's the start of the journey, honestly. Paul and I were neighbors, and we got to know each other while living on the same block. And when I was thinking about this earlier, something came up. I was thinking, Paul, your mom one time came over to our house for lunch. She made these fried green tomatoes. And I think the first time I've ever had that, and I still think about it today. But anyway, so yes, thank you for having me on the show. I was born and raised outside Chicago. I went through the Chicago public school system and did really at the high school level. I went to a college prep that really set me up for I think my current path that I'm on now. So I went to Walter Payton College Prep, which in Chicago there are these selective enrollment high schools that you have to apply to, you have to test to get in, and I was fortunate to be admitted back then. And for me, I really, stayed on top of the academics, but also involved myself a lot of extracurriculars. I was class president. And I think that really, being involved in many different things, getting to know a lot of different people, I think it set me up well for college. I went to University of Pennsylvania. And when I was initially entering school, I thought that I wanted to go into politics. That was like, from my class president days, I was also this thing called youth mayor of Chicago. I thought that was going to be like the driving force when I got to my college campus. But it was 2006, and the banks were doing extremely well at the University of Pennsylvania. The Wharton schools where a lot of big banks recruit talent. And even though I had interest in politics, I've always had this dual interest in business. And I thought like, hey, why not give it a shot? Let me try to get an internship in the finance role and see what happens. And so as a history major, I applied to internships in finance, and I was successful. I interned at UBS after my junior year of college in investment banking, and returned the following summer for a full-time role where I spent the first 2 years out of college. And so about this part of my career, this was very interesting because at this point, entering UBS on Wall Street was 2010, so right on the heels of the financial crisis.
Exactly.
In the investment banking department, in the group that advised financial institutions. So as you saw many of the big institutions failing and really coming up with charting out a new path forward, I knew that I would learn a lot in that time there, and I certainly did. For me, I knew that the investment banking part was pretty interesting, but I also wanted to be on the side of the clients who were coming in to get the advice from us. So rather than being the person giving the advice to other companies, I wanted to be the person running that company that hires investment bankers. And so at that point, my career changed to being more so of a general manager working inside of companies, really driving operations, strategy, that type of thing. And so after 2 years of investment banking, I moved to a company called McMaster Carr, where I had the opportunity to manage a team of 20 people at the age of 24. And so this opportunity was great to get early hands-on experience in terms of developing a strong team, how to encourage my top performers, or at the same time motivate low performers, and at the same also get the experience of being responsible for mapping out the strategy of my department. It was a lot of good experience at an early age. So I was able to do that for a few years. And from there, I went to Groupon in Chicago. And at Groupon, the missing piece of my experience as far as that I was never really very close to the customer, and I was able to work in a business development role where I was able to directly connect with clients, to craft deals, campaigns for Groupon merchants, to run on their platform. So these were three very different experiences that I had already had out of my college days. And I was thinking, at this point, I've gained a lot. I've learned quite a bit, but I still hadn't found what I was quite passionate doing. And so at that point, I made the decision to apply to business school, because I thought business school will help me, contextualize everything I had done before, and hopefully I will be able to discover an area that I will be really passionate doing, and it will really get me set up for the rest, the next part of my career. And lo and behold, I stayed in Chicago. I had the opportunity to attend University of Chicago Booth School of Business, which I think for me really exceeded my expectations and my time there. I can spend more time talking about that if you like, but really at Booth I landed an opportunity to work at JPMorgan Chase. So it's funny, I walked in saying like, I'm going to go find what I really want to do, what I'm really passionate. And it's funny, I'm ended back at a bank, right, where I started my career. But the way I think about it is, when I was first out of college is when I first gained exposure of how banks work, how they operate. And this time around, it's really to sustain a path forward. And so at JPMorgan Chase, I am a vice president and digital product manager, where I help bring products to life for customers. So these products are ones that you see in the Chase app as well as chase.com.
Nice. So what's your current title right now, position?
Vice president and digital product manager.
Exactly. And it's funny that you mentioned that, because me and you were actually talking privately about the journey, right? And we're talking about, going to school and you being at Chicago Booth. And we brought up the point of networking. How important has networking and mentorship and the different people that you've met along your journey, no matter where you were working, how important has that been to success?
I think it's been super important. I remember back to when I was in high school, I took an amazing course called leadership. It was taught by a former consultant who had sold her firm for 9 figures, and she decided to go into teaching because that's where she actually got her degree in, but she never was a teacher. She always worked in business. And in this course, she brought in several leaders to speak to the class, and it was phenomenal. I still remember some of the feedback, some of the advice that some of these leaders provided. So one in particular was a gentleman named Peter Bino. He was the first African American to be a minority owner of an NBA team, the Denver Nuggets. And one of the pieces of advice he gave the class was to never let the fear of failure paralyze you. I think that in so many parts of the journey, it's easy to just be scared of like not being able to achieve the goals that you really set out for, because there are all these roadblocks, things that seem like roadblocks in your way. And sometimes you think about those roadblocks too much and you actually shut down from actually doing anything at all. And it's a proven thing, inaction will get you nowhere. So I think, that's one example. I think as my, career has progressed, I've met so many people along the way. And I think in this current part of my journey, I've definitely been inspired by the leaders who really pushed for me to bring my entire self to work, or to where I am. And I think that is important because, we're all unique individuals out here. And sometimes you think that you have to form into whatever the mold is at where you work. But really, I think the true value, what you really bring to the table in life or your job, is really bringing your whole personality, your whole self to work. And so I can talk more about that too. But I think those are two examples of like how mentors have helped shape my journey.
It's crazy. I was talking to Paul probably a few days ago about this book we're reading, or I think we're both reading it right now, the 50 Cent memoir right now. And it's really funny. It's funny, we're reading this book about this rapper, and here we are speaking to a young VP of in finance. And both of you, he started out his book right now, because I'm in the first chapter. He started off his book saying the first thing he had to get over was fear. On the other side of fear is freedom. Here you are starting off this interview talking about fear, conquer that fear, don't shut down, and things like that. What are, I guess, one or two roadblocks that you've had to overcome on your path so far?
Yeah. So I would say like early on, like being that history major going into finance, trying to apply to get into investment banking, that was a big roadblock because
Yeah.
honestly, at that point, I hadn't even taken calculus yet, and I was, much less, microecon. And in my head, I was thinking like, okay, I'm going to be competing against all these other folks who have that economics concentration in college. They are studying this stuff day in, day out. Like, how am I really going to stand out and distinguish myself to get into the interview and much less get the job?
Exactly.
And ultimately, I had to chart a path. I got involved with the Black Wharton Undergraduate Association. I was a history major, not in Wharton, but I finessed my way into getting them to name me co-chair of their annual
All
conference.
right.
And in that role, I was able to network with the recruiters from all the top banks. I was able to get in front of them and I'll actually get them to see who I was. And so that's so important, so that to make that connection, so that when they're reviewing the resumes, they know, oh, that's Daniel. I remember meeting him at the career fair. I think that helped me. The other thing I did to prepare myself was I reached out to senior, like juniors and seniors, basically upperclassmen who had already gone through the process. I sat down with them for them to, help, coach me on like, what are the things that I need to do to prepare myself, so that when it's time for the interview, I'm ready to perform. And I was so fortunate to have so many good, people help me for that particular part of the journey. And for the internship, I actually was fortunate to be part of an organization called SEO, Sponsors for Educational Opportunities. Excuse me. And the way SEO worked was you apply to the organization. If you get an offer from SEO, you are then matched with one of their banks. And so one of the banks that sponsor them. And so through this entire recruitment process, I ultimately ended up joining the President's Summer Internship Program at UBS. And at the end of the day, I ended up working for the president of UBS at the time, Robert Wolf, who, when I met him, by the time I met him, he was like, your resume stood out, like your strong name and your credentials, and it all worked out. And so that is one example of how I got through a major roadblock, and it set me up here.
Yeah, that shows.
Uh,
I was gonna say that shows
uh,
initiative too. You had to finesse yourself onto the team.
exactly. Building on you reaching out to those upperclassmen, How important were mentors on your journey, and who were some of those mentors?
Yeah, so I would say one of the mentors that stands out is um, the pretty senior executive inside of JPMorgan who oversees digital payments, and his name is Prashant Gandhi. He is an alum of Chicago Booth, and for me, I think really in a way took me under his wings when I was an intern as an MBA intern. So this is just like 3 years ago. To really give guidance as I put together this pretty large project. It gave me exposure to his entire senior leadership team, and I think it really the way he invested in my summer. I think some of the time sometimes what you really need is just to feel that you're getting invested in by someone else. And so I think that I really value the mentorship there. And then I think he's the type of person that I go to when I am considering a new role, and he helps me think about what are the things I should consider, and what are the things that people should be doing at various levels. So what does a strong vice president look like? So those are the questions I was asking, like, a year or 2 years before I was even up for vice president. And so that he's definitely someone that I continue to keep in touch with as I go through my journey. I also I also have mentors who may not have fancy titles. So some of the administrative assistants at Chase have really taken me under their wings, and they really have taught me, they clearly, the good thing about the administrative assistants, they see everyone at the organization, and they see how trajectories differ, like the people who do extremely well and the ones who are not as good, and they give that insight and that support, and I feel like it's super important for me as well. So I'm definitely the type of person, I'm interacting with everyone. I feel that I can learn from everyone in the workplace, and so I think there's just really a whole range of mentors that I've been fortunate to learn from.
Hey, to that point, it's funny because in that book, right, it says that if you want to know something about a company, right, you talk to the janitor, because the janitor knows everybody. He knows who comes, who
Yep.
goes. He knows who stays late at work working. You know who's having an issue or whose stomach hurts or just knows everything, right? You talk to the janitor. So it's funny that you said that. I think that a lot of higher level associates and VPs and C-suite guys, right? They forget that. They forget that, man. You know what? This company, if you want to know something about the company, you have to talk to the people, right? And it's interesting that you say that. You talk to the administrative assistants. I mean, what do? They help out some of the most powerful people in the company. They mark up the calendar. They make reservations. They know what's happening. So yeah, that's interesting.
Super important.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I see next on this list, current events. I kind of wanted, I don't know how much you can actually, speak on it, but, just the other day on Twitter, somebody was speaking about Wells Fargo and how their CEO had actually commented on their diversity issues they're having. And he said, this might seem like a cop out, but, our diversity issues stem from a limited pool of Black talent.
Sheesh.
Now, obviously, you working in finance as well at JP Morgan, have, and just, for other companies in the finance sector that you have worked at, have you noticed any, I guess, issues when it comes to diversity, or how have you been able to combat that at JP Morgan through your role?
Yeah. So, you know, I think yeah, it's great for you to bring this up. I actually read the same article, so I am familiar. Um, but the way I view it is that, are the numbers low in terms of African Americans specifically inside of large firms? Yes, that's true. Um, but I think it's a very nuanced topic. So for starters, I think many banks have, programs where they are focused on bringing in African Americans at the junior level, so the analyst, associate levels. And I think many banks, from what I understand, have more difficulties with retention. So seeing, I guess, retention and also, I guess, promotion, promoting African American talent. So it's what you see is you may see the numbers of African Americans it may be at what you would expect at the junior levels, but once you're getting up senior, it's more and more difficult to see those individuals and the numbers. And I don't I don't agree that it's a talent issue. I feel that oftentimes it's just the lack of opportunity given. So if people are never put in a seat where they're able to one day move into the C-suite, then of course that's going to be an issue. And so I think that is something that many banks are trying to grapple with. And I try to do my best to bring my whole self to work, as I was mentioning earlier, and do what I can to advocate for strong talent, and to really look out for my peers, and my colleagues who are in a similar situation.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah, it's funny, man, because I actually I had this conversation with somebody at work on a higher level, and what we talked about was how you go to these interviews for different positions, right, inside and outside of the company, and the first thing they usually ask you for is what? Experience, right? Do you have experience at management? Do you have experience at this? Do you have experience at that? The problem with that is that if you never get the opportunity to get the experience, how do you get
Where's
the
the
experience?
experience come
Yeah,
from?
yeah, exactly. Where does the experience come from? So we hit this
Right.
brick. So we hit this brick wall, right? So that limits your talent pool right there.
Or it's a situation where, oh well, this candidate is good, but they don't have these one or two things that cancel out. So it's this idea of looking for the unicorn who
Right.
is African American, but also has all these other boxes covered. Whereas that same line isn't given to non-Black employees a lot of times. It's it's one of those situations where if they have a good record, they show that they're strong, but there may be a few open spots. Oh, we'll work with him. We'll figure it out. And so it's like step one, acknowledge that, hey, this is a thing. This is a problem. We can't keep doing this, because if we keep having this approach, then we'll never have diverse candidates and or diverse executives and senior leadership. So that's like something to be conscious of. And so I think it's one of those things where it comes from the most senior levels to advocate for to advocate for managers to be thoughtful about the teams they are bringing together, because if not for anything else, it's about, especially at a large bank where you're covering millions of households, you want to have a staff that reflects the communities that you serve. And when
Absolutely.
the communities you serve are not one gender or one race, they are many different people. And until you are getting a team, a staff that represents everyone, there's always something better that you can do. There's always more that you can give. And there's something it's an opportunity that you really miss out on. And so I think companies are starting to pick up on this, because there are real economic impacts
Absolutely. Yeah.
when you have this diverse team that's creating this product that really speaks to everyone. This is better for shareholders. There is actual economic returns. And so that's not the only reason you should do it, but that's one compelling reason for sure.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
business. I mean, the
yeah.
decision makers have to reflect the the customer base. I mean, you can't make decisions based on a customer base that you know nothing about. So
And speaking of shareholders, I was telling Paul, this really isn't good news for Wells Fargo. I mean, they just kind of clawed their way out of a scandal. I mean, the subprime loans, you know, they've been through the ringer the past couple of years. So to kind of walk headfirst into this and have that quote come straight from the CEO, I mean, that's not something that's really working well for them, especially when you speak about shareholders. It's another PR disaster for them to kind of work their way around now.
I was about to say they need to diversify their PR team. It seems get somebody in there.
Hey,
Tell them about to put that out
figure
there.
it out.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's at that level. Every word you say, every word that comes out of your mouth, especially if it's public,
absolutely.
people are watching, you know, and it, you know, it's one of those situations where you don't really have the opportunity to like, you know, change what you said too quickly. As soon as you say it, it's out. It's hit the news, and I think you know that that's part of it too. So it's just the responsibility you have at that level. It just you know points out like this is something that you know senior leaders must take very seriously and be thoughtful about. You
Yeah.
know, what is said about it.
As far as the economy is concerned, because you working for the bank, have you noticed an uptick in influx of business coming in and activity, or from your standpoint, from what you guys have going on, what do you think? What do you think the outlook is?
So yeah, I'm just not in a position to comment on that. I
Okay.
and especially in my role, I'm not really customer facing. I'm kind of like inside making the products, and so it's a little bit away. So I'm not the best one to comment on that.
Okay.
How is your day-to-day kind of structured being, um, I guess, focused on being a digital product manager?
Yeah, it's kind of like conducting an orchestra, honestly. Like, I am sitting at the center of many different teams that bring ideas from um, literally just an idea to like an actual product that customers can look and you know interact with inside the app. And so what that looks like, um, you know, from the early part of the stage, I work with researchers who bring in actual customers to understand what are the unmet needs they currently have with the Chase app. I work with designers. Once we understand what those needs might be, I work with designers to you know figure out you know what is an actual product that we want to bring to life and how should it look. And so that's part of the process. From there, once we have like a sketch of what the product should look like. We've done the vetting to figure out, you know, is there a business case for this? Like, do we think that this is something that customers will actually, you know, um, buy into? From there, I work with developers who actually build the code and you know bring it to life. Along the way, from there is we have marketing. So we have to go out and market to our customers and let them know that this product is you know now available for them to use and why they should use it. I work with attorneys. Everything that we do must be vetted by our attorneys to make sure that we're covering all our bases there. So there are no 2 days that look similar to each other, but I think that's what makes it exciting, because it's also just looking ahead, like what are the cool new features that I can incorporate into my products, and you know how will it impact them? Because it's one of those things I can talk to my friends, I can talk to my mom, just different people who everyday folks who use the Chase app. You know, I know that it will impact them. It hopefully will make their lives easier. And so one of the cheesy things that, you know, sayings at the company is we strive to do, help everyday people make the most of their money so that they make the most of their lives. And I think that's ultimately like the role of product manager, creating these products inside the app. I think that it hopefully will have a positive impact.
And I guess just to build on that, have you seen any, I guess, changes, or has the pandemic altered your division in any way?
Yeah, I think like for many companies, like and my company included, is like we have to like go back and figure out what's the right way we should organize ourselves, and how do we need to change our our strategy just based on the current environment. And something that's ongoing. It's always in flight. So unfortunately, I can't talk too much about what that exact strategy is,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
100%, like it is something that is top of mind for the company, and that we're just trying to navigate just like many other companies.
Cool.
How's working remotely? Are you working remotely now? Or are you still in the office? If you don't mind me asking.
Yes, I'm working remote. I've been working from home now since March, and all in all, I think it's been going well. I think, with Zoom, it's been easy to stay connected
Hmm.
with my team, and in some ways, I feel like I'm more connected. But it's been going well. It takes time to get comfortable at home, but now I'm really in the groove of it. I really like it.
How's well, I guess outside of work, how's the climate in New York right now? Just with obviously the pandemic, but social unrest. Obviously, we all have that connection to Chicago, but I know some people who live in New York, and for a while, it was up and down. Some days were okay, some days there was protests, some days it was, um, I guess, daily fireworks going off that they don't know where it's coming from. Is everything safe out there, or how's New York right now?
Yeah, I mean, as you're asking your question, I was just reflecting back on this year, like how crazy has this year been?
You
But
know,
also, it's just like so many different. I was thinking about back to like early March, those last couple of weeks on the packed subway cars.
oh
My
yeah, you probably haven't even been on the subway in a minute.
yeah, I was off for a long time. I'm back on. I wear my mask and I feel okay getting on the subway. But it's first it was the sudden just shutdown, where stay at home, and this busy, vibrant city just like is like no one is come to a pause. Like no one is out in the street. Times Square completely empty in the middle of a Saturday, and people were just you know in the house besides going to the grocery store for the most part until April, May. Weather starts breaking a little bit. They start allowing some restaurants to offer meals to go, that type of thing. So that was like, okay, we get a little social. um, and then George Floyd happened. The killing of George Floyd. I think it was such a provocative moment in New York history, like, or just, I think it was just like such a moment in history when we had just people of all colors, backgrounds really come together in the streets for peaceful protests. Like in my neighborhood and other neighborhoods that I would travel to. And it was to the point where like every day I was running into a protest, even without me planning to go to one. It was just like, oh, on my way to an appointment, I was, greeted by a protest. And what I loved how it really did bring together a really diverse crowd. It was a lot of people, I think, had the time since we couldn't do anything else. I think a lot of people had the time to really reflect and think about the situation, how unfair it was, and for many people, especially non-Black people, really begin to understand, or to even acknowledge and see the systematic oppression that happens, and how it's structural. Racism is
Absolutely.
it's structural and really rooted in many different parts of society. So I think that was a great time to be in New York because so many people had that realization, and I just hope that momentum carries on, and people are, really interested in seeking real change.
Daniel, Daniel, we got a couple of minutes left. I just want to know, if you were to sit down with a young person, of any race, and they were to ask you, what made you successful, what should they do, how should they go about pursuing their dream to be successful, what would you tell them? What advice would you give a young you or a young me?
Yeah, I have a 14-year-old nephew and a 7-year-old nephew, and the 14-year-old just entered high school, and so I was just thinking about what are what is the message that I want to pass on to him at this juncture. And I think back on my upbringing, my education, and although I've always had people on my side rooting for me to really invest in my education and really seek the best outcome, I I really believe that ultimately it was myself thinking, really making it an objective to really go out and get what I wanted. Like people around you can tell you like you should do this or you should do that, but it's not until you yourself really buckle down and figure out and develop that attitude that you're just gonna go and get what you want, then that makes all the difference in the world. So I feel like in simplest terms, like you really just have to be a go-getter. You have to define what it is that you want out of your life, and you have to be strategic. You have to really think about break it down into little steps of what steps can you take today to set you up for that tomorrow you want. And so, when I was a kid, I used to read the encyclopedia. I would read the biography of every U.S. president. As a kid, I wanted to be president. And literally, it's like, okay, what school did they go to? Like, what did they study? And honestly, that's what got me into the mode of like, oh, I need to go to an Ivy League school because that's where all these other U.S. presidents went. And so from an early age, I started really just trying to figure out what do I need to do to set myself up for that next goal. And so I think to sum this all up, it'll be one, dream big, two, break that dream down into small actionable steps that can move you closer to your goals.
Hey, thank you,
Thank
Daniel.
you.
We appreciate that. And thank you for coming
Episode
on the car.
15.
That's right. Episode 15, Daniel Patton. Pleasure to have you.
This was
Thank
awesome.
you.